Good day, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the CARICOM One-on-One. Today we will be discussing with Ambassador Colin Granderson, Assistant Secretary General for the Directorate of Foreign and Community Relations, some of the conclusions of the recent meeting of CARICOM foreign ministers in St. George's, Grenada. Stay tuned. A very good morning, Ambassador. Thank you for inviting us to your office for us to discuss some of the conclusions of the recent meeting of CARICOM foreign ministers in St. George's, Grenada. I was quite curious about the communique issued following the meeting and how Venezuela was prioritized in the issues which were discussed. Was there a particular symbolism, a particular reason why the issue of Venezuela was appeared first in the communique?
Well, I don't think that the numbering necessarily says that is a major priority. It is a priority, but it was just at random that was placed first.
Okay. This 22nd COFCOR is one of several key council meetings in the lead-up and in the setting of the agenda of the July Heads of Government Summit, isn't it, Ambassador?
Yes, it is. It's one of the many meetings of councils, whether it has to do with councils dealing with trade, councils dealing with human and social development, financial affairs and planning, and also foreign affairs. But according to how should I call it, the terms of reference, the Council for Foreign and Community Relations, that basically it's the Council of Foreign Ministers, it meets formally twice a year. The first meeting takes place in the month of May. Second meeting takes place in September. And that second meeting in September takes place in the margins of the General Assembly of the United Nations. The meetings are important not only because they lead towards the meetings of heads of the conference, but also because it's important in its own right, in the sense that it brings the foreign ministers together. It's the key forum for determining the positions of CARICOM member states on issues of importance with regard to our relations with the wider region, with the hemisphere, and obviously internationally.
A communique issued by the CARICOM Secretariat detailed the conclusions of the discussions in Grenada. You can find it on the CARICOM website at www.caricom.org or the CARICOM Secretariat news blog at today.caricom.org. I also want to talk about the concept of leveraging the community's voice in an era of challenges and disorder. This was the theme of the foreign minister's retreat in Grenada, and it was alluded to by the SG in his remarks about the current global environment. Could you talk a bit about the challenges, the opportunities, and the necessity of CARICOM speaking with one voice in this global environment?
All right, let me first perhaps say a word or two about the retreat. Over the past, I would say, 10-15 years, a decision has been taken that basically half a day of the 2 days will be set aside for discussion, open, free discussion, very frank, in what we call the retreat. A discussion paper is drafted here at the Secretariat. It's obviously circulated in good time to the foreign ministers, so they all have a chance to read the document, to reflect on it, so that when they get together, you have a wide-ranging discussion. As you underlined, the theme this year was leveraging the voice of CARICOM at a time of challenges, at a time of unpredictability in the international system. Speaking with one voice is only one of the approaches that the paper puts forward as a recommendation. But yes, we need to speak with one voice. We are a community of small states. It's quite clear, we know from experience, that when we come together and we speak with one voice, we happen to get our voices heard with less difficulty in the cacophony of voices that make up the international system. So that obviously is very important. Over the years, the foreign ministers have spent a lot of time discussing how best to improve the coordination of foreign policy. We put in place a number of measures. We've looked, for example, at institutional frameworks. For example, there's a bureau of the COFCOR. There are also meetings of the senior officials, coordination or exchange of ideas between senior officials. A chat group on WhatsApp has been put in place with regard to foreign ministers, which means that if a particular important development that requires an instant response comes up, that it's possible therefore to bring everybody together very, very quickly through the chat group. I think that not enough attention is paid to the fact that CARICOM speaks with one voice more often than not. For example, at meetings of the United Nations in New York, meetings also, for example, of the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., when there are discussions on the wide diversity of issues that come up in these organizations, very often when CARICOM speaks, one person is selected to speak on behalf of the group. And this happens basically on a daily basis. It happens also in Brussels, for example, with regard to relations with the European Union, and also meetings at the Secretariat of Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific grouping. And perhaps not enough attention is paid to the fact that this happens, as I say, on a daily basis. But at the same time, yes, we are a grouping of sovereign states. Each state, we have a number of things in common, but every state has interests that are not necessarily shared by other member states, or they would have priorities that are particular or peculiar to them, and therefore they may take a position which differs slightly, or which may differ greatly from the position of the grouping, of the community on a particular issue. Obviously that tends to be played up when we don't speak with one voice, but as I said, we do spend more time speaking with one voice than otherwise. But during the discussion, other approaches were put forward. For example, the importance of advocacy and how we go about putting forward our concerns or promoting our interests. Examples were given. For example, over the past 2 years, certain heads of government have played a key role in putting forward the position of CARICOM on particular issues. For example, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda has done a lot of work with regard to correspondent banking, the issue of de-risking. More recently, in March, April of this year, there was the Prime Minister of St. Lucia who took a key role in leading the charge with regard to the issue of blacklisting. Now this is very important because it means therefore that yes, our ambassadors, other representatives play a very important role with regard to advocacy, but the foreign ministers also play that role. But when a head of government comes into play, it means therefore that obviously the weight, the stature of the person who is making representation obviously is far more important. And it also opens doors that are perhaps less accessible to ambassadors, for example. In the case of blacklisting, CARICOM have been trying for quite some time to get a meeting with ECOFIN, which is basically the financial council of the European Union, to be able to have a meeting with their members with regard to the issue of blacklisting. And through the fact that we had a Prime Minister who's leading the delegation on this particular occasion, but also with the support of Romania. Now, Romania is a fairly, what I would call, it's a new friend, because our relations were established fairly recently with Romania, but we've been able to strike up a very, very good and strong relationship with that particular country. And at the same time, Romania happens to be the president of the European Union Council. Therefore, that relationship was able to open the doors, and the Prime Minister of St. Lucia therefore was able to have this meeting and to be able to speak basically to the persons who make decisions with regard to blacklisting. So as I said, advocacy is important, and how you go about doing it is also important. The paper also underlined the importance of communication. In today's world, one needs to be agile, one needs to be rapid, because if you don't put forward your own position, your own narrative, the narratives of others therefore would prevail. So therefore we need to move much faster. So all these things came up in the course of the discussion. The fact that over the years CARICOM has been able to put together a number of what we call concepts, things like, for example, like graduation. The fact that as middle income countries we have less access to overseas development assistance and financing, which is a major headache when it comes, for example, to rebuilding after disasters. We put in place the concept of resilience. That resilience is very important. That yes, it's important for us to rebuild after natural disasters, but it's also as important to be able to how should I put it, to strengthen our resilience, so when a disaster does in fact strike, the damage is not as great as it would be if preparatory work had not been done. So all these are some of the aspects that came up in the course of that discussion. But as I said, the retreat is normally used, therefore, to have a wide-ranging and a very open and a very frank discussion on these issues.
A very important topic on the agenda and in those discussions in Grenada was COFCOR's discussion surrounding the UK's departure from the European Union. They welcomed the progress made to secure our future trade relations with the signing of the CARICOM UK Economic Partnership Agreement. There are two challenges in my mind, and I'm sure in the mind of our stakeholders, which I would like you to distill. One, what is the nuance or distinction between the CARICOM EU EPA and the CARICOM UK EPA? Could you tell us what is the difference or the nuance between those two?
All right. First of all, it's the Economic Partnership Agreement is between CARICOM plus the Dominican Republic and the European Union. And when that agreement was negotiated, the UK is, because until Brexit takes place, if it does take place, then the UK remains a part of the EU. But a decision was taken by CARICOM and the Dominican Republic within the framework of CARICOM that if the EU was going to withdraw from the European Union, it would be very useful to maintain a trading agreement which had existed with the UK within the framework of the EU. Therefore, over the past few months, negotiations have been taking place to roll over, we call it a rollover, meaning therefore that the same trading arrangements that exist within the framework of the EU should be maintained with the UK, obviously with some small modifications. And that basically has been achieved in that the negotiations have come to a conclusion. Both sides are satisfied with the outcome, and the member states of CARICOM have started signing the agreement. Therefore, again, it's an example of CARICOM and CARICOM being proactive. We knew that Brexit was a possibility down the road, that for us, the major trading partner within the EU happens to be the UK for us, and certainly CARICOM member states. Therefore, an effort has been made to retain the access to the UK market by having the rollover of this economic partnership agreement.
I want to talk about the region's advocacy for the U.S. to extend the Caribbean Basin Trade Partnership Act and the World Trade Organization waiver beyond December 2019. Why is this advocacy important for the region?
That particular arrangement is about to expire, and therefore we've been negotiating, speaking with the United States with regard to having it extended. for a further period of time. And at the moment, a lot of work is being done, not only at the level of foreign ministers, but also at the level of senior officials and also our representatives in Washington D.C. For example, in the coming weeks, there's going to be a meeting of the Trade and Investment Committee, that's the CARICOM, United States Trade and Investment Committee. Therefore, preparations are afoot for that meeting. Hearings have taken place also in Congress with regard to extension of CBERA, and our ambassadors, CARICOM's ambassadors in Washington D.C. Have been appearing at these hearings, and the Secretariat also has made submissions, which all become part of the effort of trying to influence the decision that will be taken by the U.S. government.
Ambassador, as you will know, CARICOM has been integrally involved in several multilateral processes within the United Nations system. Processes related to the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the International Seabed Authority, areas beyond national jurisdiction, the high-level midterm review on the Samoa pathway, and various levels of climate change negotiations leading up to the COP25 later this year. Why is CARICOM's involvement important in these multilateral processes?
Well, CARICOM's involvement is extremely active and has been for quite some time. As you know, that over the years, CARICOM has played a very active and leadership role with regard to all the issues related to small island developing states. We've played a leadership role with regard to AOSIS, which is an assembly of small island developing states. Climate change for us, as our heads and foreign ministers underline incessantly, is perceived as an existential threat because of the damage it does, whether it's through the increasing intensity of storms, whether it has to do with drought. Many of our member states are suffering increasingly from drought, lack of rain, lack of water. The sea level rise, again related to climate change, so that both with regard to small island developing states and our place in the wider world, the issues that confront us, the peculiarities of small island development states, we've always been very active in that area. Climate change, as I said, is seen as a major threat to the future of our small island developing states. Therefore, we have been very active. We played a very important role. I think that one of the shortcomings of CARICOM is that we don't speak enough about what we achieve. For example, with regard to the Paris Agreement, a lot of work was done before the meeting, the climate change meeting in Paris took place. And during the meeting itself, we were extremely well organized. We have put together a very detailed brief. The heads themselves played a very important role in giving guidance with regard to what should be the priorities. For example, the effort to have the increase, all right, in warmth be cut off at 1.5 degrees. It took a lot of work, but we were able to get that included in the outcome document.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Granderson, for those insights on the recently concluded meeting of CARICOM foreign ministers. Remember, for more information of these and other topics, and for more interviews with personalities from around the region, visit the CARICOM Secretariat news blog at today.caricom.org. Visit the CARICOM website at www.caricom.org. Like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next time.